The question seems simple. If you're born on American soil, are you American? But behind that simplicity lies a battle centuries in the making, a battle fought in courts, in Congress, in living rooms and detention centers, and in the silent hearts of millions. It's the story of who gets to belong, who gets to be called citizen, and who decides. The idea of birthright citizenship, that being born in a country automatically makes you a citizen, is known in legal Latin as jus soli, right of the soil. But this principle didn't fall from the sky, nor was it written into the soul of the United States from day one. In fact, for much of America's early history, citizenship was a murky concept. The Constitution itself never clearly defined it. The founders debated it endlessly, but left the question open, perhaps intentionally. As waves of immigrants arrived, as new territories were absorbed, and as enslaved peoples were brutally counted but never seen, the question festered. And then, America shattered. The Civil War tore the nation apart, not just over slavery, but over the very idea of who counted as human. When the blood dried and the Union stood battered but intact, a reckoning had come. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, was supposed to settle the matter once and for all. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. It was bold, it was radical, it was clear. But clarity does not stop conflict. Almost instantly, the amendment became a battlefield. Southern states resisted, finding ways to exclude, redefine, or delay its promises. The idea that black children born in the South were suddenly citizens enraged former slaveholders. The fear that Chinese immigrants' American-born children would be too numerous sparked violent backlash in the West. And the question arose again and again. Does being born here really mean you belong here? Then came one man, one case, one decision that shaped the next century. In 1873, Wong Kim Ark was born in San Francisco. His parents were Chinese immigrants, laborers forbidden from becoming U.S. citizens by law. But Wong was different. He was born on American soil. He played on the same streets, breathed the same air, and went to school like any other child. And yet, in the eyes of many, he was never truly American. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first major U.S. law to ban immigration based on nationality. It didn't just stop new immigrants, it turned existing ones into targets. Wong's family was caught in the storm. His parents returned to China, unable to remain. Wong stayed, holding on to the only thing he thought couldn't be taken from him: his birthright. But in 1895, returning from a visit to China, Wong was stopped at the port of San Francisco. The officials told him he was not a citizen, that despite his birth in the United States, he didn't belong. They tried to send him back. Wong refused. He fought his case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And there, in 1898, the nation held its breath as the justices deliberated a single haunting question. Does the 14th Amendment truly apply to everyone born on U.S. soil? The government argued no. They claimed the amendment never intended to include the children of immigrants, especially those like the Chinese, foreigners who, in their eyes, owed no loyalty to the American state. To accept Wong's claim, they warned, would open the gates to unwanted citizens. But the court disagreed. By a narrow majority, it ruled in Wong Kim Ark's favor. His birth on U.S. soil made him a citizen. Period. This case became the cornerstone of birthright citizenship in America. Without Wong, The 14th Amendment's promise might have withered under political pressure. His victory was quiet, almost forgotten, yet it protected millions to come. And still, the battle was not over. Wong Kim Ark had won. But a victory in court is not always a victory in life. Despite the ruling, hostility only deepened. The late 19th century and early 20th century saw a surge of nationalism, and with it, a fear of the other. New immigrants flooded in from Southern and Eastern Europe, fleeing famine, war, and persecution. But to many Americans, they didn't look right. They didn't speak English. They weren't Protestant. And suddenly, the idea that anyone born on U.S. soil could be American seemed dangerous. So the government turned inward. Immigration stations like Ellis Island and Angel Island became gates of scrutiny. While Ellis Island processed mostly Europeans with speed, Angel Island was a fortress. Asian immigrants could be detained for months, even years, interrogated, insulted, forgotten. Still, American-born children continued to arrive. Babies born on ship decks, in tenement slums, in cotton fields and railroad camps, each of them holding the invisible shield of the 14th Amendment. Or so they believed. Because as the years passed, politicians began to test the limits again. Could they deny citizenship not by birth, but by parentage? What if someone was born here, but their parents were undocumented? What if they were enemies of the state? In 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act granted Native Americans full U.S. citizenship, finally rectifying a centuries-old exclusion. But it wasn't generosity. It was a strategy. The government wanted to erase tribal sovereignty, not empower indigenous peoples. Once again, citizenship became a weapon. World War II brought more tests. Japanese Americans, born on U.S. soil, were stripped of their rights, rounded up, and placed in internment camps. They were citizens, yet treated as traitors, suspects, aliens in their own land. Birthright meant little in a world of fear. Still, the principle held. Judges cited Wong Kim Ark again and again, reaffirming that birthplace, not background, was the defining line. But even as the law stood firm, hearts remained divided. Who belongs? Who decides? And what does it truly mean to be American? By the 1980s, the conversation around birthright citizenship had taken a new turn. It was no longer just about immigrants. It was about borders, about politics, about fear. A new term emerged: anchor babies. It was a phrase soaked in suspicion, suggesting that immigrants had children in America only to exploit the system, to anchor themselves to a country they didn't belong to. Right-wing commentators seized on the term. So did politicians. Suddenly, the 14th Amendment, once hailed as a monument to justice, was under fire. In 1993, Senator Harry Reid introduced legislation to end birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. Ironically, years later, he would call that effort the biggest mistake of his career. But at the time, it echoed loud. Others joined in. Bills were proposed. Debates flared. Campaigns were won and lost on this question. Does being born here really make you American? Legal scholars weighed in. Most agreed. Wong Kim Ark's precedent was clear. The 14th Amendment didn't make exceptions, but some argued that undocumented immigrants weren't subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S., and therefore their children weren't entitled to citizenship. It was a narrow reading, a weaponized reading, and it gained traction. By the early 2000s, media narratives exploded. Stories of women rushing the border to give birth in U.S. hospitals, reports of citizenship tourism, politicians called for constitutional amendments, presidential candidates promised executive action. Yet, amid the noise, real lives hung in the balance. Children born in California, Arizona, Texas, kids who said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, suddenly feared they didn't belong. They carried birth certificates, but were told they weren't truly American. Their existence was debated on TV screens, their rights tossed back and forth like political footballs. And still, Wong Kim Ark's name echoed in courtrooms. His legacy stood like a shield, quiet, firm, and often forgotten. But it was there, behind every child questioned, behind every document inspected, behind every attempt to rewrite the rules. The fight for identity had never ended. It had only changed form. In the 21st century, birthright citizenship remains one of the most fiercely debated issues in American identity. Some see it as a sacred promise, an unbreakable bond between soil and soul. Others see it as a loophole to be closed. In 2018, the debate reached a fever pitch. President Donald Trump declared he would end birthright citizenship through executive order. Legal scholars immediately responded, it was unconstitutional, unenforceable, political theater. But the damage was done. The conversation had shifted. Once again, the same question emerged. Who gets to belong? In courtrooms and classrooms, on news panels and family dinner tables, people debated the meaning of citizenship. Was it a gift? A right? A weapon? Could it be stripped away? Could it be earned? Some states began to question issuing birth certificates to children of undocumented immigrants. Others launched investigations into fraudulent births. Each move chipped at the foundation, quietly, relentlessly. Meanwhile, activists pushed back. Lawyers invoked Wong Kim Ark's case, time and time again. They argued that a country defined by birthright could not afford to erase it without unraveling its soul. But what is citizenship truly? Is it a passport, a piece of paper, a flag, or is it the quiet certainty of belonging? The knowledge that no matter what your parents did or where they came from, you are home. Wong Kim Ark never lived to see the full impact of his case. He died in 1924, quietly, without fame or monument. But his legacy lives on in every child born on American soil, regardless of surname, accent, or status. The fight is not over. Each generation must choose again whether the 14th Amendment is a promise to be honored or a problem to be solved. The law still stands, but laws are fragile. They are rewritten by fear, or fortified by courage. And so we return to the question, what kind of country does America wish to be? One that welcomes with birth, or one that decides who is worthy after the fact? The future of citizenship may rest not in the hands of judges or presidents, but in the voices of those who were born here, raised here, and who dare to say, I belong.